this screencast is for you if you missed the day in class where we went over the comma rules together. And before you left, hopefully I gave you this handout. This is page 2 of the packet I gave you. The first page that I gave you has the instructions for the comma story. It's called I Know How to Use Commas, the 7-sentence story. Skip that page, and then the next page you should see this. If you don't have that packet, then you can go ahead and print out this handout from Schoology. I posted it here on Schoology right next to the screencast. So you're going to need this, and then I'll go over each comma rule and I'll kind of lead you through these notes on the side. Feel free to press pause at any time during the screencast if you need to pause. All right, here we go. Comma rule number 1. Comma rule number 1. Use a comma before the conjunction in a compound sentence. So in order to understand this rule, first you have to know what a compound sentence is. A compound sentence is 2 complete sentences, or it actually could be more than 2 complete sentences, but the examples here are 2 complete sentences that are joined together. So compound basically means combined, and so the 2 complete sentences are joined together with a comma and a conjunction. The second question on your note sheet is, what are 3 examples of conjunctions? So here on the side we have the acronym FANBOYS, and that stands for 7 of the most common conjunctions, the most common and most simple conjunctions, and those are for, that's an R, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. So the note sheet asks you to write down 3 examples of conjunctions. You can write down 3 of these, or you can write down all 7. But fanboys is the easiest way to remember what those conjunctions are. Now, please note that these are simple conjunctions that I would like for you to use for this comma rule. Sometimes students try to be fancy and use other conjunctions or other words that they think are conjunctions. So for example, the word however, therefore, because, although, a lot of these don't exactly work with this rule. So my preference would be that you choose one of the fanboys conjunctions. So if we look at these sample sentences, we can see that they are 2 complete sentences joined together. So the first part, Nygaard wanted a hot snack, that could be its own sentence. There could be a period there. And we know it could be its own complete sentence because we have a noun that is a subject, and we have that subject doing something, a verb. And so if you have a noun, a subject, and a verb, then you have a complete sentence. The second half of the sentence, he didn't know how to use the microwave, could also be its own complete sentence. We have a subject, he, and we have a verb, didn't know how to use the microwave. So both of those could be their own complete sentences, but instead we're choosing to join them together with a comma and a conjunction. In the second example, it's the same situation. Nor needs to do her homework after school, could be its own complete sentence. Nor is the subject, and needs to do is the verb. And then the second half, she is also supposed to go to soccer practice. She would be the subject, and then is also supposed to go would be the verb. So we join those 2 sentences together with a comma and a conjunction. At this point, you may pause this screencast and come up with your own original example of this rule. Comma rule number 2. Use a comma to separate items in a series. This is probably review for you from, elementary school. You probably know this one already. So if we look at the first example, Aiden brought sushi, carrots, and yogurt. You need a comma to separate each item in the series. If we didn't have a comma here, then it would look like Aiden brought sushi carrots, like as if sushi carrots are a type of carrot or like an item, a single food on their own, sushi carrots. So we put the commas in order to make it clear that each item is a distinct item in the series. This one, Alicia spends most Saturdays knitting, practicing the harmonica, and singing loudly in her room. That separates those 3 items in the series. Now, this comma right here, the second, or actually the way I should phrase it is the last comma in the list, the last one that's in whatever list, because you can have a list of 4 or 5 things too. It doesn't have to be only 3 things. The last one is called the Oxford comma. And just in case you're interested, some people don't believe in the Oxford comma. They think that it's okay to not have one. And that's fine. If you believe that, I'm not going to try to argue with you. But I will show you a couple of cartoons that show why the Oxford comma is valued most of the time. Most people believe in the Oxford comma. For example, let's say you're having a party, and the sentence is, "We invited the rhinoceri, Washington, and Lincoln." With the distinct commas, with the Oxford comma, you can tell that you're inviting the rhinoceri, Washington, and Lincoln to your party. If you don't have the Oxford comma, then it looks like, with just the one comma, it looks like Washington and Lincoln are the names of the rhinoceri. We invited the rhinoceri, Washington, and Lincoln. So if that helps you understand the value of the Oxford comma, there you go. But if you want to just ignore everything I've just said about the Oxford comma, that's fine. The point is, you should separate each of the items in a list or a series, and right now you can pause this screencast and come up with your own example of this rule. Comma rule number 3. Use a comma before and after an interrupter. So the first question is, what is an interrupter? An interrupter, as you can see from the examples with the red underlined part, it just interrupts the sentence. You have a sentence, and then in the middle of it, you decide to put something else in there. Here's a visual of what an interrupter looks like. You have your sentence, and then your interrupter, separated by commas, just kind of goes right in the middle of the sentence. And the real trick of knowing if your interrupter works is if you take it out, then the sentence should run together again, and it should flow just like a regular sentence. So that can be your test. Once you come up with your example sentence, if you take the interrupter out, the sentence should still make sense. Okay, so back to the comma rule. The examples here are, it would be awesome, comma, in my opinion, comma, if Josh finds something fun to read at the library tomorrow. If we took the interrupter out, the sentence would be, it would be awesome if Josh finds something fun to read at the library tomorrow. The part that we inserted, the interrupter, in my opinion, is just simply, obviously, someone's opinion. Or it's almost like an aside, like somebody might mutter something under their breath, or the speaker or narrator is kind of inserting a little afterthought into the sentence. The second example is, 8th grade, comma, unfortunately, comma, is going to go by really fast, Eva commented. Unfortunately just sort of shows her feelings about the topic. If you took it out, it would read, 8th grade is going to go by really fast, Eva commented. By the way, this comma here is, we don't have a comma rule for this one in this packet, but that is also a time when you want to use a comma, is at the end of dialogue, if you have what's called a dialogue tag. Eva commented, Eva said, Eva asked Eva, something like that. So that's not a comma rule that we're going to go over in this packet, but just for those of you who are curious or who are interested in punctuation, that is another time when you would use a comma. But back to comma rule number 3. This one is just about interrupters, and so now you can pause the screencast and you can come up with your own example of a sentence that has an interrupter in it. And don't forget to test it by taking out the interrupter, and the sentence should still make sense. Comma rule number 4. Use a comma after an introductory word or phrase to separate it from the rest of the sentence. So you can see an introductory word or phrase is just the way that you introduce at the start of the sentence. There's some kind of it could be a single word, or it could be a phrase of words, like once upon a time, that starts off the sentence. So, once upon a time, comma, Owen liked cheese. Apparently from this sentence, Owen does not like cheese anymore. Sadly, comma, Lucas does not want to play cards with me after school. Fortunately, comma, Kimmy said she would play cards with me instead. Other simple single words are words like, yes, comma, I would like a piece of pie. No, comma, I would not like a piece of pie. Finally, comma, somebody offered me some pie. So there are lots of different sort of single words you can use to start sentences. Introductory phrases can also, you can have once upon a time. You can have phrases like, although I didn't want to go to the library, comma, I still accompanied my friend Sam. So they can be longer phrases or they can just be single words. Right now you can pause the screencast and come up with your own example of rule number 4 with an introductory element. Comma rule number 5. Use commas before and after all proper nouns or nouns of direct address. So the first thing you have to know about this rule is what is a noun of direct address. So this is the way you would directly address somebody, which means you would directly speak to them. So it might be somebody's name. It also could be somebody's title. That doesn't necessarily need a capital, but it could be the title Sir. It could be Ladies and Gentlemen. It could be Mr. President, someone's title like that. I'm sure, it could even be like kids. Hey kids, what do you want to do today? Right? So it's however somebody is choosing to directly address you. That's what a noun of direct address is. So in this example, I'm speaking directly to Audrey. Can you tell me, Audrey, what you are going to do this weekend? And this is kind of like an interrupter. If you took it out, the sentence should still make sense. Can you tell me what you are going to do this weekend? It also doesn't have to be in the middle of the sentence. It could be at the end of the sentence, or it could also be at the beginning of the sentence. I don't know where you want me to put the stapler, comma, Mr. Lacayo. Or that could start the sentence. Mr. Lacayo, comma, I don't know where you want me to put this stapler. So in the instructions it says, or in the definition it says, they go before and after commas. Sorry, the commas go before and after the noun of direct address, and that's true when it's in the middle of a sentence. If it's at the end of the sentence, you just need a comma before, and if it's at the beginning of a sentence, you just need a comma after. Hopefully all of that makes sense. Feel free to ask questions if you're confused, but at this time you may pause this screencast and write your own sentence using a noun of direct address, and just remember you need to be speaking directly to somebody else in order for this rule to work. Comma rule number 6. Use commas before and after most appositives. So I'm guessing this is a new word for most of you. This is a grammar word, appositive. And the definition is right here for you. So what is an appositive? An appositive is something that gives more information about the thing that just came before it, meaning the thing that came right before the comma. So here, in this first sentence, Arthur, a mischievous student, threw a paper airplane across the room. As you can see from this arrow, a mischievous student is giving more information about Arthur, and that's the thing that just came right before the comma. So once again, an appositive gives more information about the thing that just came right before it. In the second example, our favorite math teacher, Ms. Hawkinson, taught us how to multiply fractions. In this example, Ms. Hawkinson is giving us more information, it's giving us her name, more information about our favorite math teacher. Now, oftentimes, these can be reversed. So the sentence would also work if it were Ms. Hawkinson, comma, our favorite math teacher, comma, taught us how to multiply fractions. Either way it works. It's giving, the second part is giving more information about what came right before the comma. So just to be clear, the part that's set off, right, before and after appositives, so the part that's set off by the commas is the appositive. I'm circling the appositive in green. Ms. Hawkinson, in this particular sentence, Ms. Hawkinson is the appositive. An appositive, you may have noticed, an appositive is a type of interrupter. So it also follows the interrupter rule, which I think was comma rule number 3, but it is now a particular type of interrupter, because comma rule number 3 did not necessarily need to give more information about the thing that came before the comma, but an appositive needs to give more information about the thing that came right before the comma. Hopefully that makes sense. Feel free to ask questions if you have any, but at this point you may pause the screencast and come up with your own example of comma rule number 6. The final sentence, or at least what I should say, it doesn't have to go in order. This sentence can appear anywhere in your story. But the 7th sentence in your 7-sentence story is not another comma rule, it is actually the semicolon rule. And this rule should be review because we studied semicolons earlier in the year when, right after you wrote your New Nation essay. So just to review, pretty much the only time you want to use a semicolon is when you are joining 2 complete sentences. And those 2 complete sentences should be related in nature, meaning like they're about the same topic, or maybe it's a cause and an effect, something like that. You should have a reason to join the 2 sentences together. If they're 2 random sentences joined together, it doesn't make any sense. For example, Cameron's social studies project was quite large, semicolon. He wondered how he was going to ride his bike and carry it at the same time. These are both complete sentences because they both have a subject and a verb, and they are both related in nature, so it makes sense to combine them with a semicolon. The second example is, Maya felt chilled to the bone, semicolon. Her thin sweater did nothing to block out the wind. Again, two related ideas. It's almost like the second sentence is the cause and the first sentence is the effect. In example number 1, it's more like the first sentence is the cause and the second sentence is the effect. So either way, your sentences should be related in nature. At this point, you may pause the screencast and write down your example sentence of the semicolon rule. All right, the only thing left is that now you can use all of the 6 comma rules plus the semicolon rule to write your 7-sentence story. And so I'll just go over the directions for that, and then you can be done with the screencast and you can start writing your comma story. So the first step is to choose what your story is going to be about. So choose the name of at least 1 character, maybe 2 or 3 that you want to create your short story about. Remember, it's only going to be a 7-sentence story, so it doesn't have to be a totally elaborate plot or anything like that. And remember that with comma rule, was it number 5? Yeah, comma rule 5, you have to directly speak. You have to have 1 character directly address the other characters. So you should have multiple characters in your story so that 1 character can talk to somebody else. It's fine if your characters are people. It's fine if your characters are animals. It's fine if your characters are personified inanimate objects. It's totally up to you. And it could be, science fiction or fantasy if you like. So you'll write a 7-sentence story about this character. Each sentence will show that you know how to correctly use the 6 comma rules and the semicolon rule. So that means that 1 sentence for each rule. That's what the 7 sentences are. You'll write 1 sentence for each rule. So in order to make that clear, you need to number your sentences. And then at the end of the story, you need to have a key. And this is really important. Your key has to be accurate to receive full credit. And that means not writing rule number 1 or rule number 6 in your key. I don't have the rules memorized, and I also don't know if you and I are referring to the same rule numbers. So you have to actually spell out the rule. I'll show you an example in just a minute. You want to make sure you have a correct heading and also create a creative title for your story. You're not going to submit this on Schoology. You're going to print it out and turn in a hard copy to me to be graded. So do make sure you have a nice MLA heading and also a title. And you want to make sure you check your work for spelling, capitalization, and punctuation in general. Not just the comma rules that we're following, but all your best spelling, capitalization, and punctuation as well. Because as you can see here on the learning targets, spelling and capitalization also need to be correct in order to receive full credit. Make sure it's nice and neat. If you choose to write by hand, your handwriting needs to be in black or blue ink and it needs to be very neat. Otherwise, please type, and I look forward to reading your stories. I will show you a sample on the next slide, or on the next screen. Here is a sample comma story. You can see there's a title, Lobby and Turtle, and you can see that it's indented because even if it's only a paragraph long, this still should be written as a story. And if you decide to change paragraphs, like for example for dialogue or for whatever other reason, then you will have multiple indented paragraphs. Lobby and Turtle. Number 1, Lobby was a lobster and he loved to hang out with his friend Turtle. If we look down to the key, this is following the rule about having a comma before a conjunction in a compound sentence, this comma right here. I'll read the rest without stopping for each item in the key. Number 2, Lobby was, according to his friends, a very generous and caring lobster. So, on the way to Turtle's house, he bought chips, pizza, and sodas. A few minutes later, Lobby arrived at Turtle's house. Lobby said, "Can you please tell me, Turtle, if you would like chips, pizza, and a soda?" Turtle, the hungriest sea turtle in the world, replied, "Yes, thank you." That actually is also following another comma rule, but it's meant to follow the appositive rule. And finally, the two friends hung out all day. Lobby did not leave Turtle's house until 10 o'clock p.m. So hopefully you, as we read the little story out loud, you were also noticing how each sentence followed the next rule on the paper. And it does not matter to me if the order of your rules match the order that they were presented in the packet. That does not matter to me at all. What matters to me is that this sentence that's labeled number 1 matches rule number 1 down here. This sentence that's labeled number 2 matches rule number 2 down here, etc., etc. Have fun, be creative, and I look forward to reading your comma stories.